So what we're going to be looking at in today's session is the topics that are covered here, and looking at the comparisons between your physical classroom environment and moving towards your virtual classroom environment, and how best to manage these environments. So I'll just hand over to Michael just now.
That's great, thanks Scott. So I'm going to talk to you just a couple of slides briefly. I won't go into a tremendous amount of detail because I know Scott's going to be covering a lot later on, but first and foremost I just wanted to talk about GLOW as a whole and the services that are provided to your local authority, and I suppose the assessment of the services that we provide, and it goes across the board, not just relating to video as such. So when we're looking at launching a service such as video, we have to try and look at the balance of risk to users, to yourselves, and the benefit that it provides. And we look at the risk. When we look at risk, we look at the security, so the security of the environment, the security of the information, and safeguarding. And when we look at safeguarding, it's not just the safeguarding of children, we have to look at the safeguarding of educators like yourself as well. So when we're assessing the tools, we look initially at how it works and what sort of restrictive controls we can put in place. So for instance, when we're looking at video, do we want students, for instance, to be able to initiate video calls or video streams themselves? And generally speaking, the answer is no. We just want educators to control that. So we're able to apply a set of restrictive controls behind the scenes that reduces the overall risk. It limits the likelihood of incidents happening, be it safeguarding, be it just malicious or misbehaviour. The other kind of key areas that we have to look at, and I think more importantly yourselves have to consider, and I know Scott's going to delve a bit deeper into this later on, is behavioural controls. And when I talk about behavioural controls, I'm talking about both for learners and for educators. So obviously there's been a big shift from the physical classroom environment into the virtual environment. However, when we look at the behavioural aspect, to me it's still the same. You still need to look at almost laying out the ground rules to the people in your class about how you expect them to behave in the online environment. Would be similar to the way you would want them to behave in the sort of physical environment as well. So when we take the technical controls, the restrictive controls, the behavioural controls that you would want your pupils to adhere to, the behavioural controls yourself, being aware of the things that you're saying, being aware of the general surroundings that are visible on the video. You don't want to see things like, your wine rack and stuff like that, perhaps you might not think appropriate. So there's all sorts of considerations that need to be taken when you're looking at that, and these are the things that I suppose almost create what we would call the risk profile for the GLOW environment. Now, no environment is risk-free, but what we look to do is reduce the level to an acceptable level, and the risk profile for GLOW at the moment has been deemed acceptable for local authorities to utilise. But as I say, I'm going to move on to the next slide just now, Scott. What I'd like to talk about a wee bit more is the behavioural controls, because we can, as I say, put restrictions in place to stop things happening. But if I restrict it to a point that it doesn't operate, or you're not able to provide the sort of functions or the roles that you want to do and deliver in learning, then the tool almost becomes pointless. There's no point in having it. So getting that balance between technical and behavioural controls, I think, is very important. Before I move on to kind of specific examples around sort of behavioural controls or user guides, how to use tools perfectly, one thing I wanted to talk about was accountability. One thing you have to be aware is, similar to in the physical environment where pupils misbehave, the same transfers to the online environment where they're accountable for their actions. Now, every user has a username and ID, and they log in to, in this instance, if you're streaming, they're logging into the meeting. We have a record that they've logged on. We have a record when they logged in, and generally speaking, we're able to record activities that happen when they're within the environment, where they've posted things or the emails, all that type of behaviour, and we can trace that back to the individual account. Earlier on, when I was talking about behavioural controls, things to consider that are kind of wider than the context of this, solely on video, but across the environment as well, is things like password distribution. I understand that a lot of schools, given the circumstances we're in, they issued things like the same password out to the full year, or the same password out to the same class, and they're doing that with the best of intentions to get the children online and up and learning so that we can continue educating. However, that type of behaviour, whilst it was done with the best intentions, changes the risk profile of the risk to you, the risk to your learners in your class, and we've had 2 or 3 instances, and since we've moved to the learning from home, and they've all stemmed from that particular thing where the same password has been sent out to a whole class or a whole year. So when you translate that to a video scenario, if you send the same password to your entire class, they kind of know you've done that. So technically, and what has happened in these instances, another member of the class will log on as, let's say, if I'm in the same class as Scott, I could technically, Scott's username's there for me to see, I could log on as Scott and I'm in your class environment, you're streaming, and I could be causing disruption and you think that it's Scott. Now, in the current circumstances, it's relatively easy for me to trace that type of behaviour back to an actual house, because people are in lockdown scenarios, so they're logging on through their home environment, so we can trace it to that individual house. One of the instances, it wasn't the person themselves, it was their big sister in primary 7. So there is a great deal of accountability within the environment, but we need to watch our behavioural aspects so that we're not, or look at, trying to give people individual passwords, or if you are or do have to distribute the same password to people, force them to change their passwords, because that'll help protect their classmates and help protect you within the Glow environment. And again, when you're doing your video streaming or live streaming, Google Meet, a lot of you'll be aware, is now available if your local authority chooses to adopt it to do 2-way streaming. So you can stream live yourself and you can see and interact with the pupils in your classroom. Now again, we looked at security and safeguarding initially. We've put in restrictive controls, and we think we have found we have found an acceptable balance of risk and benefit to enable educators to see their pupils and perform the classes, and vice versa, the pupils can see back and interact. However, there are some user guides and steps that have been produced and sent out, and I've kind of highlighted these ones here just to let you see the importance of the user guides and getting it right. So the do's down on the left-hand side of the screen are quite clearly things that you should do. When you're doing it, these are things we would say that you should do. So use classroom meets when meeting with learners, invite learners to meets created using a meeting nickname. Now, that's very important that you follow that rule, and there's step-by-step guidelines there. If you do not use the meeting nickname, and you invite them through their calendar, then they almost access through as an external person. It will look like your person, it will be your student. However, because they're coming in externally, we can't apply the same level of controls over them. They don't technically be treated like students within the Glow environment. So at the moment we've got two sets of kind of permissions, I suppose is the easiest way to describe it. So teachers can do a lot more in the Glow environment because they're teachers, they're professionals, and they need to be able to do more to perform the role. Students don't have the same amount of privileges that teachers do because they are students. They are wide-ranging in ages, different behaviours. So to reduce the risk again to everybody in the environment, we limit what they can do. However, if they come in to a Google video meeting through the do not areas, then technically they have the same ability as teachers within there, which makes it a bit more difficult and it creates increased risk. So I know Scott's going to go through more holistic details around videos, and he's going to talk about best behaviours, etc. through, but these were the kind of key areas that I wanted to call out, which was, as I say, the fact that we look at the security and safeguarding, but there is a reliance on behavioural controls for setting out to the pupils how you would expect them to behave. We can restrict it so much, but there still will be the standard, same way they would in a class, or if you're off out on a trip or whatever. Again, behavioural controls yourself when you're sending out passwords, these type of things. Try to think a wee bit more about the impact that could have in the wider area. And I can't stress enough the importance of the user guides. Alan Feeney, who's on the call, for instance, in relation to Google Meet, he produced the user guides on these, and he spent a lot of time putting them together to make this as safe and as enjoyable a learning experience for yourselves and the children within the environment. So I don't really, Scott, have anything else I want to add at the moment. I don't know if there's any questions you want to take just now, or we can get them towards the end. Or
that's right. Just if there's any questions for anybody just now, Eva, before we sort of move on.
Okay, there was just a couple of questions coming through there. Just let me scroll back up and I will check. Is the invite only for Google Classroom rather than Teams?
So this reference here that I have on the screen at the moment is purely relating to Google Meet. There's a different set of instructions that's available for Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams at present is only what I would call one-way video, so you can stream to your learners, you can hear them in audio and they can chat back to you. At present, two-way video streaming is not available. We're working with Microsoft almost daily at the moment to have some technical changes. We want to get the balance of risk and benefit there, that we're comfortable to enable that. So hopefully in the not too distant future, if we can reduce the risk to an acceptable level, we may look to do that.
Great, thank you. And then Miss Tarbett here, she's raised a good point. So what if your Wi-Fi had cut out when you were streaming, you're locked out, but your learners are still in there? So in that case, I would probably suggest having a backup, maybe using your data on your phone, something that you could get into to be able to end the meeting. Any other thoughts, Scott and Michael?
Do you know, that's a very good question.
The thing I would say, Michael, is that when you're live streaming, I would make sure the way we've got Eva as the moderator.
Yeah.
You get somebody else there in a backup that you can contact if your Wi-Fi fails and you do get kicked out. And we'll talk about that later on. But I would always recommend that you never live stream by yourself. You've always got another member of staff with you. And then that enables that if you are kicked out, then they can end the meeting quite quickly for you.
Okay, then there's a specific one here for Google Meet. So if not using the calendar, how do you initiate a classroom meet?
Can I pass you over to my very learned colleague, Alan Feeney, to answer that? He's a technical specialist in Google, and I believe he's online just now.
Thank you.
Put under pressure now, Michael. Thanks for that. So the reason, I'll just run through this does and don'ts quickly to answer that question. So we're saying use classroom meets. When meeting with learners. So to do that, you can get into the settings within the classroom, and that creates a link. The link, when you do it that way, means that the calls will end every time that the last person leaves the meet. So when and they won't start until the teacher initiates that meet. So when that ends, it resets the link. If you set it up through calendar or as a recurring meeting through calendar, it means people can get in and out after they've initially joined. So that could be an external person. If it's set up within Classroom, then no one external can join. So it protects the users because it's an enclosed group. So when you mention if the Wi-Fi drops out, there can't be anybody external in. So the guidance will still be add in a second teacher, but we've got that extra protection there because it's restricted within the tenancy. If you set it up within a calendar, that link can be shared external. So it might be that a student forwards it on to someone else, but you've got no control over it within Classroom. Only you can start that meeting, and when you end it, no one else can rejoin. So you've also got the option, if you're in charge of the meeting, to record that as well within Google Classroom. It does prompt you to ask for permission, so you need to make sure you've got that. If you're last to leave, you set it up through Classroom, that ends the call. There's another option to do a stream within your own tenancy as well. That allows up to 10,000 users. So that's like a present only mode. So that would have to be created in the calendar. So it kind of goes against what I just said, but it creates two links. So what the approach would be you only share the stream link with the students, and it would only be presenters that get the meet link. So if you've got a stream link, all you can do is view, so you can fast forward, record, or rewind and so on. But if you've got the meet link, you can present your screen and you've got a lot more things you can do on it, so a student shouldn't be getting that. Michael and Scott spoke about local policies. So part of the reason this is an opt-in service is because we've said that we've reduced the risk to an acceptable level, but some local authorities might have additional guidance or different points of view on that. So it's important to be aware of what your authority thinks. The part of the risk that we have identified is that just now when we enable video for students, it also turns on a chat facility. So that's going to be changing in 2 weeks' time where it blocks that. But for now, that risk's there. So that's something that local authorities need to consider. And they need to give students guidance on that to make sure they're not doing unmoderated chats between each other. So again, on the do nots, we've got do not invite learners to meets through calendar. As I just said, the reason for that is because external people can come in, and these meetings might not end when the last person leaves. So they could keep going if it's a recurring invite. People can forward these links on and so on. The second point is just the same. The meets created through calendar have a code automatically, so you shouldn't share that code. If you're in a meet with learners that you've created through Classroom and the way that we advise, don't just leave it because it would leave student-to-student chat. And again, this next one's for the streaming, which I've just covered, so you shouldn't share the meet code unless you want someone to present. There's a separate streaming link, and only that should be shared. So that, hopefully that covers most of the questions that I saw there. I'm just trying to scroll through and see if anything's been missed.
A couple more questions just coming up about Teams, but that's coming up soon. Let's see. So there was one there about what's the best way to schedule a Teams meeting. Should it be a do not for the calendar as well in Microsoft Teams?
This is not for sharing videos within, or for students sharing videos, so it protects them. So the guidance might be slightly different for Teams. I wouldn't like to give the definitive answer on that. So it really depends who's going to be on the meets. This thing I'm going through is purely just for for Meet and facilitating students sharing video.
There was one more question there, Alan, about meets. How can we do a live meet across more than one classroom then if not using the calendar?
So basically what this nickname that Michael was talking about is what Calendar creates. So to try, if you create a Meet through Calendar, it gives like an 8-digit code at the end of the Meet, which is called the Meet code. If you create it through a classroom, it's got a much longer string at the end, and that's called the nickname. So nicknames can only be used within that tenancy. So you could share the nickname that's created in your classroom with other users within the tenancy, but it wouldn't work for external users. So that'd be a way of doing that if they weren't in the classroom. What it does in classrooms, it just gives a quick link along the top, so it's always there and it's always visible for students. But you can share that internally within your school or authority. But it would be the same guidance again. Make sure that you're last to leave and the meeting has ended. So after that ends, it can't start again until you've initiated the video call.
Great, thanks Alan. And then there's one more here from Mrs Venter, so more of a safeguarding question. So if you have a learner struggling with a skill, can you have a video meeting with just that learner? So that would be a one-to-one.
So that needs to be managed at your school and local authority level, and the functionality or the capability to do it exists, but you would need to discuss this with your school in the first instance and local authority. I am aware that some local authorities have a process in place to enable this to happen that needs sign off from various different parties at senior level, because whilst yes, it's going to benefit you and the learner, but there are safeguarding risks and other risks that need to be considered in one-to-one learning. So 100% you would need to speak to the school and then turn your local authority to get some form of process in place to protect both yourself and the learner, and they would need to assess that and decide themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Michael. That would be a discussion that you would have to have with your senior management within your school and your local authority. But it certainly would be recommended to have one-to-one chats or video chats with learners. As you move forward in August into blended learning, it might then be appropriate to have a face-to-face chat with them to go over the area that they're finding difficult. Have we any other questions, Eva, just before we move on?
Just one more here. Is it possible to record a meeting to help get around the problem of dropping internet connection during a live meet? I'm guessing this one is Microsoft Teams. Not at the moment.
Again, if you feel you need to record a live session, then it might be possible to look at another way of doing it rather than live streaming. You could record your PowerPoint presentation, or you could do a video recording using screen capture software and then just post that in a file within Teams, and pupils could access that at their own leisure.
And then you've got a backup as well if your connection does give you any problems.
Okay, we'll just move on to the next slide. So what we've got to start thinking about is what will our virtual classroom look like. We're moving away from having the physical classroom environment, and more time kids will be spending within the virtual classroom environment. Now, as practitioners and teachers, we're very good at managing and having classroom management within the physical classroom that we currently have within our schools. And we need to have clear guidelines when we're using streaming of what acceptable behaviour is, because you will not be dealing with any, I would say, new behaviours. What you'll be dealing with is enabled behaviours. So if you're not confident, for example, using the settings within Teams or Google, then the learners within your class may take advantage of this. So things like understanding how to mute someone's chat if they are having an appropriate chat. Is it a good skill to have, or to turn their camera off as well? Especially within Google, if you know how to turn their camera off. And the other thing you'll be looking at is looking at how you could remove the learner from the live stream if their behaviour persists in being inappropriate. So again, as we talked about there, we need to understand the pros and cons of the platform that we are using. What's its ability? What accessibility does the learners have? And us understanding how to reduce the risk to ourselves and we're live streaming lessons. So it's very important that you have clear guidelines, similar to the way you would have clear guidelines in your class for acceptable behaviour. You might have a class charter up on your wall, or a set of rules within your school that learners must adhere to while they're in the physical school building. You have to think about your virtual classroom in the same way. So what's acceptable behaviour for you? What's the repercussions if somebody's having an inappropriate chat? Then how do we remove that chat? How do we then stop them from streaming? And how do we remove them from the live stream? And that's why it's important that you have a second member of staff with you to either moderate the chat facility and deal with any behavioural issues. So for example here, I'm doing the live streaming. My computer's been used to show the presentation, whereas Eva's monitoring the chat. She's managing the chat, so if pupils have got any technical difficulties, sound's not working, Eva can deal with that within the chat as well. So that's a good practice to have somebody else with you at that time, because if you think about it, if you've scheduled a lesson for 50 minutes and then you spend the first 30 minutes dealing with technical issues, then the live streaming uses its effectiveness. If you're dealing with misbehaviour and, as I say, technical issues that learners will experience while we're live streaming and using technology, whether it be Wi-Fi dropping out, whether it be your machine crashing halfway through it. So you need to build your confidence to deal with that as well, and that's why it's always important to have another member of staff with you. Now, again, you may be thinking, oh, what's our timetable going to look like? Remember, when you're live streaming, you don't have the same constraints as a physical classroom. So for example, we will over 100 people attending this webinar just now. You could have a full year group live webinar with a different member of staff managing the chat and somebody doing the presentation. So you've got to start thinking about it. When you're using your virtual classroom, you don't have the same constraints as a physical classroom walls, limited number of desks, limited number of seats. You can have more than one class put together in live stream in one live streaming session. You don't need to have a live streaming session for your five live streaming sessions for your different first year classes. You could have one live streaming session for S1. So you need to start thinking about, again, what's the pros and cons for doing that and how do we manage that live streaming event. And then the last thing we'll come on to is know how to report a concern. Whether it be somebody's having inappropriate behaviour, there's a report a concern button on Glow. You would then need to obviously look at your school behavioural policies. Who do you inform at that point? So you're looking at who do you report any concerns you have about behaviour, people not engaging in learning. If you report a concern in Glow, then it would be passed to Michael and his team to look at, and they will then get in contact with your school. So your head teacher, so it's probably best if you speak to your teacher. Pupils can report concerns as well about inappropriate behaviour, and again that will go to Michael's team, and then it will go down to the local authority level and your head teacher for them then to deal with. So it's always good to think about, if you reported a concern in Glow, you should report it to your senior management team as well. Or if a pupil's reporting a concern, it's good to have clear guidelines for them to report concerns, whether they go to their guidance teacher or whether the report of concern and GLOW, again, that's up to your local school, but there would have to be clear guidelines for pupils of how they go about reporting concerns within your virtual classroom about other people's behaviour, and looking at how they would report a concern within the physical school building, just the same way if they were in a secondary school, they might go and speak to their guidance teacher around this. So you need to have clear policies on how learners report concerns while they're in the virtual classroom environment. So again, well, as I mentioned before, we're all very good as teachers at having a clear set of rules agreed for our physical classroom. Now we need to start thinking about what will the rules look like for our virtual classroom. So how will your learners register? You know, if you've got then a webinar with 60 kids on it, it's going to take you a long time to register if you're going through and asking for if each person is here, the way you do a traditional register. Whereas if you look at the Teams example just now through the chat, as everybody logged in, they said hi. Again, that you gather on your registration at that point. And then other things like how learners ask questions. So you guys are posting your questions within the chat facility. Eva's going through the questions, and then when there's an actual break in the presentation, Eva's asking the questions to myself, Alan, or Michael. And then when should we use chat? When should the learners be able to use chat? Is that when you're having a discussion within the live stream? If you're going to incorporate discussions into that and what your learning will look like while you're live streaming. And another thing you've got to think about is who sees their work. You know, if we put something in Teams files, then everybody in that team will get access to it. How do you give feedback? Are you going to give feedback in the chat facility about pupils' work? Or are you going to give audio feedback? Within the Microsoft Teams and OneNote, there's ability to give audio feedback on individuals' learning. And then again, it's how to be safe and show respect to everyone else that's in the virtual classroom environment. So you've got to start thinking about these charters or rules specifically for your virtual classroom environment. What will your live streaming look like? How will you interact with learners? How will learners ask questions? How do you register? Another thing you've got to make sure is how do you know it's that learner that's logged on, as Michael talked about there. You might have that incidence where somebody says their account's been hacked and somebody's posted inappropriate comments or changed their work. Now, again, that would be, you would, through GLOW and using Teams, we'd be able to look at the chat facility, we'd be able to tell you where, as Michael said, where they logged on for, so that offers you that area of protection and confidence to say we actually know it was from your home address, because we can track the location of the device that's logged on and made the comment. Then also within GLOW and within Teams and Google, the chat logs are kept as well. So if you have that chat with kids and they're saying, learners were saying, no, I didn't make that comment, you can go back and look at request to chat and then look through it that way as well. So so it's about you thinking about how will the live streaming work, what content we're going to live stream, how will they ask questions, and for example, how do we do the register? If you're making it out open to over 100 learners, your whole first year, second year group or third year group, doing maybe social subjects or English, how do you register them within that hour time slot? So, and then another good way to do that is have a Microsoft form. You'll do your evaluation in your form, in a Microsoft form, which takes seconds for you to complete the evaluation. You could have starter questions at the beginning of your learning in a Microsoft form, and if learners complete these starter questions, you know they're there, and you get how many responses. So if your live streaming session is for 60 kids and you only get 30, you know, only half's turned up for your session, and you can make that you can see each individual who's posted the response as well. So these are just some of the things you need to start thinking about as you move towards live streaming and move towards blended learning. And then, how do we cope with inappropriate behaviour? So as we talked about, unexpected visitors appear. If you've got harassment, cyberbullying and peer-to-peer sharing images or sharing inappropriate material. Now, these are things that would generally happen and could happen in your physical classroom. You could have somebody unexpected turn up at your classroom door, but you could quite confidently deal with that instance. Within your classroom management would allow you to deal with harassment, bullying, and sharing inappropriate materials within the physical classroom environment. We need to think about how we can deal with that in a live streaming event and within our virtual classroom. So that's about knowing your settings within your platform, whether it be Team or whether it be Google, and having the ability to remove someone from a team or remove someone from a live streaming session, know who to contact to get information around it. So who would you contact to get the chat logs for Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom? Who would you contact to get information about the location or where the chat came from, the inappropriate comment came from? This gives you confidence as practitioners going forward to know your platform and have the confidence to deal with these incidents that happen. So understanding where could sharing of inappropriate materials happen. If we look at, we're in Microsoft Teams today, so if it's in the file section within the Teams, they're putting it in there, then you can see that that's an area that might happen. They might put a hyperlink in the chat facility that takes them to another OneDrive document. So you've got to that's why it's important again to have somebody else monitoring the chat, because if you're presenting and links start popping up, then you'll not get time to look at these links and see where the links go and remove them from the chat. That would then interrupt the live streaming session, and you spend a lot more time dealing with inappropriate behaviour than you would do presenting your sessions to learners. So you have the confidence to use the platform and understand how the platform could be misused, then that allows you to deal with these situations as they arise, or be proactive towards these situations rather than reactive, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. So have a good understanding of the platform that your school or local authority has decided to use, whether it be Google or Microsoft Teams.
Thanks, Scott. I've got a couple of questions there if you've got a wee minute to pause.
Yeah.
So a few questions coming through about teacher risk. So things like learners screenshotting the chat or screen recording the teacher delivering a lesson, things like that. And sort of what steps can we do to avoid teacher risk? And I think you've covered some of it already. You know, if they were recording you in the classroom, you know, you would have to deal with it accordingly. But it's the knowing, you know, what they're getting up to on the other side of the camera. And I think Michael covered a bit of that earlier on as well about the Glow reporting tool.
Yeah, as for learners recording, depending on what device that they're going to record on would give the restrictions to whether they could record. Now, Eva, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you've, for example, an iPad, if you do a screen recording on that from like Teams, it doesn't get the sound.
No sound, that's correct.
There's no sound, so there are limitations in the devices that they would be using that would stop them doing that. So you would need specialist types of software to record and get good sound quality, and then to mess about with the recording or take screenshots are pretty straightforward to take in any laptop. But again, that's why if you've got a PowerPoint presentation like this set up, they kind of get a picture of you. They would get a picture of your presentation, and that reduces the risk a wee bit that way. So understanding the limitations within some of the technology that the learners will be using, so most of them might be using, so let's say for iPhones, they'll no record sound. The iPhone tablets wouldn't be able to record sound either, and if they wanted to Through Microsoft, it could be a wee bit harder to record the live streaming session as well through Teams. But again, it's about having that understanding your platform you're using and looking at the chat facility. They can screen grab the chat as well, but again, that would just take it as an image. They would have to start messing about with it, and cropping it and cutting it and reposting images. But again, you understanding what learning is going to take place, at what points can they screen grab you if you're presenting to them and they see your video, or you don't have your video turned off if that's a concern for you. Again, as Michael said, nothing's 100% secure. There would be no way, of you stopping kids taking images of you in the playground or walk it in your classroom. They might sneakily take some images or record your lesson within your classroom. You're competent enough to manage that and understand the risk. There's a small risk of that happening as well, and it's the same when you move to your virtual classroom. Yeah, I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you, Scott.
Is there any other questions just now, Eva, before I just move on?
Just a comment popped up there about you can actually record audio over Teams with Samsung, so that's good to know for us. Sounds there on an Android. But I think you're going to cover more about class rules and things, or we certainly will in the wakelet. But I don't know what you think, but I mean, you would be stopping the live stream, and you'd have to have some sort of agreement before you could start them back up to safeguard yourself as a teacher as well.
Yeah, and it's about them having clear understanding of the rules and guidelines and what appropriate behaviour is while you're in your virtual classroom, the exact same way you have it for your physical classroom. So again, these are some of the steps that we would take to reduce the risk to you, as we talked about, and it's just stuff that we've covered throughout the session today. And looking at, you need to have moderate the live streaming session. Again, you can see how effective it's been with Eva and Michael and Alan as well. So we've got 4 members of staff on this webinar today. Know how to report a concern and ensure the learners know how to report a concern and what that process looks like. Because if they think, oh, I can make that comment and then I can see I've been somebody else hacked my account, no, we can actually tell you the location of the device that made the comment, when the comment was made, at what time it was made, who responded to the comment. So it's key to inform learners of the support that you have through Glow. That is your biggest weapon to reducing the risk. Because if you get some learners saying, will I make the comment, will I not make the comment, and that's how you change their behaviour. And I'm not going to make the comment because they managed to find out that it was Scott's computer from his home address that made that comment. And that will be the biggest deterrent for that. I'd imagine, especially within the majority of pupils, won't stop everybody. Totally agree with that. But there was, even within our physical classroom, there is risks when we're in there with mobile devices and kids bringing their own devices in as well. And again, so in being confident when you're using the settings and the platform, so whatever platform your school or your local authority decides to use, whether it's Teams or Google, I would say make sure we're using it through Glow, because you've got that support from Alan and Michael and the rest of the Glow team. You've got that sort of levels of protection that they've got there as well, where you're getting your do's and your don'ts for your Google Classroom, and what you can and can't do within Microsoft Teams. So understand your platform that you're going to use before you start live streaming is a good way to reduce the risk. How do I mute? How do I turn them off? How do I kick them out? How do I share a meeting code to stop the unwanted intruder coming in? I'll share that my English code with somebody else's English. You come in and disrupt that lesson, they'll never know it's you. So understanding how to share the codes, how to do your live streaming, the most secure way to do it, and then having the confidence just to end the live streaming if the inappropriate behaviour persists, or the kids aren't engaging with the learning as well, you can have the confidence just to end that session. And then if you end a session, your school policies or procedures that would follow. Like if I have to end the session, then each parent's getting lettered or text or phoned saying there was inappropriate behaviour in Mr. Hunter's computing class today. 12:30 the session was asked. You could send a text message out to parents to inform them about that. The session had to be ended for these reasons. It will reinforce the classroom charter or policies that you've put in place to ensure that learners are safe and secure while they're live streaming. Again, as we move forward, it's going to be an integral part of your learning and teaching, possibly live streaming, part of your blended learning as well. So identifying what learning has to take place face to face and what learning suits live streaming and what learning will suit collaboration through Teams on a document, and how can you give feedback to learners as well. And then having times where you don't, I would recommend not having one-to-one video calls with learners. If that's something that's got to happen, you're concerned about something, then do the same you would do in the physical school building. You would never have that chat. You'd maybe pull the guidance teacher in. You would organise a meeting with their parents to come in, again with guidance staff. So if it is a concern that you have and you feel you've got to one-to-one video chat with the pupil, then bring in your principal teacher or bring in a guidance teacher. But it's up to each individual school or authority to decide what's acceptable and what's not acceptable in their local situation, because everybody's different and everybody's learners will be different as well. Have we got any more questions, Eva?
Yeah, we've got one question here. It would have been a great question for Michael. We covered that last week or the week before, but I can't remember the answer. Can Glow trace comments after they've been deleted in Teams?
I don't know if Alan's still there, but I believe nothing's ever deleted. I think they've got all their comments.
And it goes
in Teams, I think it is logged. I wouldn't like to say 100% for Teams because I've not got access to the admin console, the backup, but it's something we could probably follow up on after this.
Yeah, we'll double check for you. We'll double check with Michael and we'll post it on our channel.
Right, so if there's no other questions, we'll just sort of move on. So that's my contact information. If you're wanting any other questions, you think of a question, you can send it on to me and I can pass it on to Michael or Alan, who's, if I can't answer it as well. We've also got some links for you just now, some guidance for the National Cyber Security Centre on video conferencing and using them securely, some stuff on how to work safely online, remotely. So again, from National Cyber Security Centre, so there's just some hints and tips in there as you're looking at the possibility of live streaming or engaging in live streaming with learners. There's some information there. There's some, again, similar to Alan's do's and don'ts that you can look out for. And I'm going to hand you over to Eva just now, who's going to talk about a wakelet that she is in the process of creating to help support this.